All right, so from 575 trials per month to 819 trials per week from AI search in just 7 weeks. So in this video, what I'm going to be doing is breaking down in a case study format the exact AEO playbook we used to help a multiple 8-figure ARR B2B SaaS company rank #1 in ChatGPT. And this is all without using any black hat tactics or short-term gimmicks. Now, when I say AEO or AI search, what I'm referring to here is basically getting more customers from AI chats or assistants like ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity. Now, just to support that claim here, so this is a screenshot of when we first started working with this client. So you can see it's dated August 25th. This client looked at their self-reported attribution and they were averaging 575 trials per month from AI search specifically. If we then fast forward to 7 weeks after that, so October the 13th, we can see this client shared their self-reported numbers with us and they were getting 819 trials within a week period. Now we are beyond this number now, but just for the purpose of this video, these are the numbers we're going to stick to. And here's a screenshot of their Google Search Console. This is not a small company. As I mentioned, they're doing multiple 8 figures in ARR. And as I'll get to later in the video, they had already been working with an SEO agency for multiple years, and we were still able to come in and deliver this type of impact. Now, just a really quick and rough intro on myself, in case this is the first time you're watching one of my videos. So I'm the co-founder at Discovered Labs. We work with primarily B2B companies, helping them with SEO and AEO, really organic search. So I'm a demand generation marketer by trade, so helped Instantly AI grow from roughly 500K in ARR to 20 million in ARR in 3 years. And I worked with them over that period, as well as some other SaaS companies that I helped. These are all testimonials or case study videos you'll find on my channel. And then my co-founder, Ben, he's a software engineer / AI researcher by trade. And the reason I bring that up is because a lot of what we do under the hood has been built by Ben. How we approach content programs is we build them just as we would a product. We try to approach them, content programs, very scientifically. Now, just in case you're wondering, like, what the hell am I going on about? What is AI search? What is AEO? Just like a quick primer on what's going on, right? So, and these are all numbers that you can self-verify yourself. So a HubSpot 2024 report reported that 48% of B2B buyers are now using AI search to evaluate vendors, right? So what this means is people are using ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, all of these LLMs to research, evaluate, and ultimately decide what vendor they're going to work with, right? And so if a big chunk of your ideal customers are doing that, then you know the downstream effect here as well. How do you influence those decisions in those answers? This emergence in AI search has really, I wouldn't say it's created, but it's definitely sped up the effect of zero-click research, right? If I can go to ChatGPT and say, hey, give me a breakdown of pricing, features, integrations for company A versus company B, AI goes out, does the research and provides that personalized answer to my unique situation, then really I don't have much of an incentive to go click onto those websites and do the research myself, right? So the downstream effect of this is that companies are seeing their clicks fall through the floor. So they're looking at the Google Search Console and the clicks are going down. Impressions are going up, clicks are going down. And so this really means that there's less control, right? So if somebody clicks onto your website, they're now in your territory, right? You've optimized that website for conversions. You're clearly controlling the narrative and biasing it towards your way. Whereas if less people are clicking to your website, you know, the influence is stopping and it's moved left into the AI answers. And I think biggest of all, and this is definitely a point of debate, is that SEO is not the same as AEO. You know, with this client, with the case study I'm going to walk you through, they had been working with an SEO agency for 3 to 4 years. But despite that, we were able to come in and within just a 7-week period, 4 to 5 to 6x their impact in AI search, right? So clearly what they were doing, which was SEO, wasn't working well. And there's a lot of data out there to support that there's not a 100% translation between what you're doing with SEO and winning with AEO. So just to get like a bit specific on some of those differences. So in traditional SEO, what we're trying to do is we're trying to chase clicks from a ranked link. What I mean by ranked link is really the game of SEO is getting onto page 1, ideally positions 1 to 3 on Google. And that's like one of the core, the primary objectives. With AEO, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get, first of all, mentioned or named in the answers by ChatGPT, but also we're trying to get our sources of information cited, because these LLMs have to pull this information from somewhere. They're not just making it up. And so if they're pulling that information from you and you are the citation, then again, that's allowing you to control the narrative and shape it rather than somebody else. In traditional SEO, we're trying to rank whole pages. So if you go to Google, you basically have 10 links on page 1. These are whole pages that are being ranked. Whereas in AEO, it's passages, short passages of text that we're trying to get. And one piece of content could have 5 to 10 citations pulled from it, right? And so the downstream effect of that is, okay, well, what needs to be in those passages for LLMs to prioritize it? In traditional SEO, we're looking at impressions, clicks, and positions. Whereas AEO, we're looking at mention rate. How often are you being mentioned relative to competitors? What percentage of citations are owned by you rather than competitors, and what's your share of voice relative to competitors? Again, who is controlling or who is shaping most of the narrative? These are the leading metrics that we're trying to improve. In traditional SEO, I think historically it's had this reputation for being low intent. You hire an SEO agency, they post 15 blogs per month. The blogs are about very informational topics, and so they get a lot of impressions. They might get a lot of clicks, but you're not really feeling the business impact. This is kind of the reputation that SEO has had. Now, I don't want to paint everyone with the same brush. This is clearly a bad execution of SEO. There are some great SEO teams out there and great SEO agencies, but this is really the reputation that SEO has had. Whereas with AEO, there's far higher intent, right? Because if you just think about what's going on here is at like a technical level, what makes AI search engines very different to like Google is I could search keywords in Google, like for example, the best HR software, and it's just going to show me the same 10 generic links, regardless of what I search, regardless of who I am, my problems, how much budget I have, it's going to show me the same 10 links. Whereas with AI search, I can give it a lot of upfront context. I can say, this is my budget, this is my role, this is my company, my industry, this is my geography. Now give me personalized recommendations based on my unique situation. And it will do that. That's one of the unique characteristics of generative systems versus deterministic systems, which is Google search algorithm. And so when people get those personalized recommendations, by the time they do click through to your website to convert, they come with much higher intent, because it's not just a list of 10 generic links where people have gamed the system to rank there. It's a personalized recommendation, kind of like a procurement team who says, right, based on your requirements, this is what I recommend you go after. There's going to be far higher intent there. And so just to like really make this zero-click research thing clear, because what we're seeing here is a change in buying behavior, and ultimately, if I could simplify to why I think SEO should be distinct to AEO, is because this isn't just like a Google update, a core update that happens a couple of times a year. This is a complete change in how buyers discover services and products. So if we look at traditional SEO, I could just search, a head term, cold email platform. I'm going to get hit with a bunch of ads, probably soon to come in AI assistants. And then I get a list of organic links, right? So the game of SEO is, how do I get my page to rank number 1, number 2, number 3 on the SERP, right? Whereas if we go all the right to LLMs like ChatGPT, how people interact with these models is very different, right? You can see here how much context is being given. And really, this is just one query. Usually people will have an entire conversation with these models. And so you're feeding all of this upfront context to the model. I'm an agency founder. That's a persona. I have 10 employees. That's a company size. I'm looking for category that integrates with this tech stack. A lot of upfront context. And so what these models do is they take that and they go out and perform web searches with all these entities, i.e. close, the company size. So they're probably like append SMB. There's some pricing considerations here. And so already how this web search is being conducted is very different to how humans interact with Google. So that you've got one part there, the web search, but then you've got the reasoning chain that happens with these models where they're going, okay, well, Liam, this is Liam's situation. These are Liam's problems. Liam 1 month ago said, he's struggling with these problems because they build up a knowledge graph of you. And so there's this reasoning chain that happens as well, so that the answer you get by the model is personalized to your unique situation, right? This is very, very different to what we've been used to over the last 10 to 20 years, where, we've used Google to do these things. And I think at like a macro level here, and I'm going to share a resource with you here that I highly recommend you read afterwards, is what we're seeing here is we've seen a technology shift that's happened, which is AI. And whenever these technology shifts happen, you just need to look at history. Distribution shifts also happen downstream, usually several years afterwards, right? And so there's a lot of overlap between SEO and AEO. Ultimately, yes, we're doing content, we're doing some brand work, we're doing some PR work, we're doing some offsite stuff. But I think why the distinction is important is because this is not just a new update that Google has updated, right? We're looking at a completely new surface area. OpenAI, Anthropic, Perplexity, these are all different companies to Google that all have their own unique technologies, that all have their own unique surface areas. So hence why I think it deserves a distinction. Same reason why, just a winning Facebook ads strategy isn't going to automatically win on TikTok. These are different companies, different technologies. They might be social media platforms, but they're very different, right? And so if you look at history, we had the internet launch in like the 1990s. And then we had the change in distribution, which was Google. And so this is where things like SEO was born, or pay-per-click a bit later, right? And so if you were tuned to what was going on here, you would be looking out for these distribution shifts. Same happened with mobile. So we had mobile apps released, and then we had like Facebook mobile apps. We had things like Instagram. More recently, we had things like TikTok, where how the For You feed on TikTok, how it prioritized what content was displayed to the user was very different to Instagram's algorithm, right? On Instagram, they primarily showed content from influencers with large audiences. On TikTok, for your content to be shown to millions of people, you didn't need a large audience. The algorithm was different. And so the downstream effects of that technology shift were new surface areas for marketers to capitalize on. And now we see TikTok agencies, UGC has blown up, right? So these are the downstream effects from the technology shift. And we're seeing the same thing happen with AI, right? So really what we're seeing today, the likes of ChatGPT, these emerged sort of 2022. And then a few years later, we're starting to see these new surface areas emerge, such as organic search within AI answers. I think very soon, maybe in a couple of years, we'll also see ads. I think these platforms will incorporate ads somehow. There's been proof that they're hiring for engineers to build out their ad capabilities. And so that will also be a new surface area to optimize for, right? So the point being here is whenever these technology shifts happen, these distribution shifts shortly follow. And Brian Balfour, a really good founder and marketer, he wrote about this on his blog, The Next Great Distribution Shift. Highly recommend you give that a read. It gets very, very tactical about AI search, specifically about this sort of cycle they go through where they open up to try get as many partners and users into the platform, and then eventually close the gate and start getting a bit greedy. And I know there's like a lot of naysayers about AI, and I don't think maybe they're necessarily wrong. I think some of the things people say definitely have some truth to it. I think there probably are a lot of concerns with AI as a technology. I think the tech industry is definitely in a bit of a bubble, but this also happened with the internet. So here's a newspaper that was published in December 5th, 2000, where the headline is basically saying that the internet may just be a fad because millions of people have given up on it, right? Look where we are today with the internet, right? So there's always going to be naysayers. I think you can't trust public opinion in times of change because, I don't know, I just feel like most people are default skeptical. And so if you listen to them too much, then you might miss out on opportunities. You know, even here you can see 1995, people predicting the web is just a fad and won't be a big deal. So here they're calling it baloney. And what people do in these situations is they always compare it to the past, but technology shifts like this, they're completely novel. And so you can't really compare it on the performance of history. And then just to go through this very, very quickly, because really the point I'm trying to hit home here, why I'm bringing technology shifts and distribution shifts up, is because this is how generational wealth is created, right? Or if you're a founder, if you're a marketer, then this is how you get 10x, 50x, 100x returns on your marketing efforts, right? And I'll probably just skip to the bottom here. Like if you look at outlier companies that have gone on to do, 100x runs, the type of companies that are being talked about all the time, these companies weren't necessarily run by smarter people. They weren't, people that are necessarily smarter than you. In many cases, these companies, they just simply operated with tailwinds, i.e. on the back of a distribution shift, rather than headwinds, right? And this is really what people mean when they say distribution matters most. It's really the difference between pushing a boulder downhill with momentum behind you than trying to push a boulder uphill with momentum against you. It's not because people are smarter. It's not because they know something you don't. It's really just that they're in a better vehicle. And so you can look at research at this. This is Play Bigger. I think this is actually from the book. I can't remember. There's a book about this, about category kings. But just to hit the top level here, so it shows that category kings, i.e. the category leaders, they capture 76% of total market cap, leaving everyone else to fight over the remaining 24%, right? So late entrants face significantly higher customer acquisition costs, often 5 to 10x more to displace established leaders, right? So people that move fast when these shifts happen get disproportionate upside while everyone else has to fight over the scraps. That's like the key takeaway here. So what's at stake with AI search? Really, for the first time in a couple of decades, when it comes to search, startups can outrank billion-dollar incumbents, because right now, AI search, these companies don't care about your company size. They don't care about your domain authority, which are like the key things in SEO. They only care about content quality, entity understanding, and trust. They only care, really, if we zoom right out, a company like OpenAI, all they care about is providing the best user experience possible, right? That's what they're optimizing for. And so if you have the right content, if your content's fresh, if it's factual, if it can be verified, then you're going to skip to the front of the queue, not because, you have a higher domain authority or rating, which was how content in SEO ranked. It's really a rare chance to reshuffle category dominance. This is truly like a once in a decade opportunity to leapfrog established competitors. The point I bring all of this stuff up is because this is the window of opportunity where billion-dollar companies are created, and it doesn't happen too often. And so potentially, if you miss this window, then you don't become the category king. You become one of those companies, the late entrants, that is fighting over that 24% with hundreds, thousands of other companies. And so I made this point earlier. When people say distribution matters most, they're rarely talking about, hey, you should post more on LinkedIn. You should send more cold emails because that's distribution. Like these things are level one of the game, right? If you want outsized returns, 10, 50, 100x returns, really what it means is building your entire business around a distribution edge and, moving mountains to make it happen. Pivoting your entire business overnight if it needs to be done, because distribution is all that matters. Everything else is worthless if you don't have distribution. And so when opportunities like this appear, you need to take it very, very seriously. And the hard thing is everything in your mind will be telling you not to, because you'll be skeptical about it. Is it a fad? Is it a short-term thing? and I definitely don't think this is like a get rich quick scheme. But for the the small minority of people who do take this seriously and get obsessed about it, I think really outsized returns await for them. Okay, so let's start getting into it then. So how do you influence buyer decisions in AI search, right? So what specific actions drive these AI citations? How do we measure and optimize for this new channel? How do we know it's working? And what does a proven, repeatable playbook look like? So I'm going to intend to answer some of these questions in this video. So we roughly follow a 4-step playbook here. And, there's a lot of simplification going on here. But the first part is an AI visibility audit. So this is getting a baseline of how you're appearing and being framed in AI answers today. Very different to what like an SEO audit looks like, because SEO audits are all revolved around Google and Bing, whereas we're dealing with completely different companies and platforms here, and we're still in the early stages of maturity. The second part is AI-assisted content marketing. So what we want to do is we want to create content that answers our ICP's questions that they're asking in these chatbots. And this content should consist of rich, verifiable facts that can be corroborated by AI models. You don't have to use AI as part of your content process. What I'm going to be sharing in this video is going to be talking about how we do that. I highly recommend you do. AI is going to allow you to move faster, which is the primary benefit people talk about, efficiency. But I'm of the opinion it can also help you raise the quality bar, right? An AI model isn't going to get tired and introduce human error at the 100th piece of content that's being reviewed that day, whereas with people, it is. But what we do is we ensure everything is led, managed, and QA'd by senior experts. So what I'm going to recommend here is not shipping AI slop, just one shot in ChatGPT to help you write content. That is not going to help you win. So I'm going to be sharing a framework, very, very tactical framework that ensures you do hit all of the right signals required by LLMs. The third piece then is third-party validation. So LLMs weigh signals beyond your site, right? So if your claims can't be corroborated by others, i.e. in reviews on different channels, in UGC community, we'll get onto Reddit, then you're just never going to make it into the AI answer, right? Maybe a simple way to put this is if on your website, in your content, you're just screaming how good you are and how bad your competitors are, if those claims can't be supported by others, you're just never going to make it into the answers. So traditional PR and backlink campaigns still work. This is really the overlap with SEO. However, you should also focus on the new surface areas such as Reddit, Quora, YouTube, and Wikipedia. And traditionally, SEOs haven't really been focusing on like UGC and community. These things have become really, really important in the era of AI search. And then finally, technical optimization. So this is really just like the technical SEO that we all know and love over the last decade. However, there's maybe a few other bits here, such as entity consistency, which I haven't seen many SEOs address. But most importantly, it's now a non-negotiable, right? Because in AEO, we're not really optimizing for humans browsing your website. We're optimizing for agents browsing your website, right? And so their agents aren't going to click through your fancy buttons and your JavaScript and your animations. They're not going to check out your fancy visuals that you've put on your blog and you spend 30 minutes in Figma creating, right? They just see ones and zeros. They just see raw HTML. And so you need to be able to give them access to your website so that they can find that context as soon as possible. Because if it takes too long, they're just going to go elsewhere. It's like with a human, if your website takes a few seconds to load, it's not the end of the world, right? It's a frustrating experience. It's not ideal. It's going to hurt your conversions. But with agents, they're just not going to wait. They're just going to go to the website where they can access information right away. So whenever we're doing AEO for companies, the core question that we're always trying to ask ourselves is what must exist on the internet so an agent can confidently cite us in the exact scenario our buyers asks about. So let me break down our Citable framework. So this is basically our framework for creating AEO content, right? And we built this from first principles. We've looked at the research papers. We've looked at how Google prioritizes content. We've looked at Anthropic. We've looked at peer-reviewed research to really understand how these LLMs work, how they retrieve and prioritize information. So I'm just going to break this down. But I'm also in the description going to link to a blog we created that also breaks this down in long form text. So as we can see, breaks down into Citable. So let's go through the first C, which is clear entity and structure. So what this is you want to lead with 2 to 3 sentence bluff, which is also known as a bottom line up front, which is basically a summary at the top of your content. You want to be explicit about that. So what is this content about? Who is it for? And when to use this topic or this use case, right? So what it involves is you're going to open with a definition under 120 words at the top of your content. What we like to do is wrap it in a component, and we quite literally call it either bluff or TLDR. We're then going to use semantic H2, H3 hierarchy, so models can pass without guessing. This is just good SEO practice. We're going to match schema markup to visible content. So we're not going to inject anything in the schema that doesn't exist on page. And just with this, again, of how we think about AI agents operate is, remember earlier I was talking about passage extraction. When these models are coming across your content, they're not looking at the entire page, they're extracting snippets, right? And so you really want those snippets to give a full picture of what that piece of content is about. Because if the snippet doesn't give that context, they're never going to go to that next step where they look at the entire piece of content, right? So the TLDR/bluff really helps with that. Imagine it as the pitch for your content. What is this about? Who is it for? And then if it passes those signals that the LLM is looking for, it will then go on to the broader page, right? So why this matters is these models need to understand what is this thing? What is this piece of content about? This user has just asked me for information. I'm going out there looking for that information. Does your content fit the description, right? So clear entity definition is going to result in higher citation confidence. And by the way, I've got a prompt you can use at the end of this to ensure your content aligns with this framework. The I is intent architecture. So what we're doing here, think of this as basically satisfying the search intent of the query, right? So we want to answer the primary question, and then through the content, through the H2s and H3s, we then want to bridge to adjacent intents. So things like alternatives, integrations, use cases, pricing, limits, benchmarks, right? So within the content, we want to answer the primary question, and then we want to try basically speak to the long tail in AI search. So to simplify this, so basically how these models work is when I query a model, it then goes through a process which is called query fan out. So it takes my query, it then splits that query out into, let's say, a dozen subqueries. This process is called query fan out. What they're doing in this process is they're adding constraints, booleans, and operators to my query to find relevant information. So if I was like, hey, I'm an agency founder, I have 10 employees, here's my budget, it's going to take my query, and then it might append, okay, HR software for SMB because I put 10 employees. HR software plus monthly pricing because I said I don't want an annual contract. That's really what it's doing as part of the query fan out process. And so when we're talking about intent architecture, is your content should really capture that long tail. All of those extra pieces of content are being appended to that query fan out process. Your content should target them, right? So for example, if we're talking about the SMB piece, then in your content, you should be like, okay, if you're an SMB, this would make sense. If you're an enterprise, this wouldn't make sense, right? So you're speaking to those varying intents, and that's going to allow you to capture the query fan out process, right? So that's what we're talking about here, basically the intent architecture. Something like we like to do, this is just good old topical authorities. We create hub and spoke model. So we'll have or pillar and spoke. So we'll have a hub or pillar piece of content, which will be really in depth, 2.5 to 5K words on a topic. And then we'll link out to several different spokes that will go into specifics about a sub area of that topic. So if the topic is how to buy a dog, that could be the pillar or hub. And then one spoke might be what are the best breeds for young families, right? That could be a spoke, right? So we're linking out to that. That's going to allow us to build topical authority for the topic of dogs or dog breeding or whatever we're trying to rank for. But also as your information is being crawled, linking out to all those pieces of content, again, is going to allow you to tap into that query fan out process. Because maybe when somebody's speaking to ChatGPT and they're looking to buy a dog, they're like, oh, by the way, we have a young family, so I don't want a dog that's going to bite my child. If you're linking out to those spokes, it's going to allow you to tackle that query fan out process. So that's what we mean by intent architecture. Third-party validation then. So what it is, backing claims of external proof. I talked about this a bit earlier. So things like Wikipedia, reviews, Reddit, news, industry forums. And so this is really like the extra surface area when it comes to AI search. And ultimately, to speak in marketers' terms, this is just an integrated strategy, right? Just focusing on one channel was really never a good strategy. You should always try to duplicate your efforts onto other channels, right? So for example, if you're creating a blog, you should also do a YouTube video of it. You should do a summary of it on LinkedIn. You should send a summary to your newsletter. This is what like an integrated marketing approach is. So what this involves, create a Wikipedia or Wikidata presence if you can. Just note for these, there needs to be some level of notability. What that means is not just any, Tom, Dick and Harry can create a Wikipedia page. You have to ideally have notability. So maybe there's been a bit of PR done. A bit easier for companies that have raised money because they like to do a bit of PR. Does your founder or CEO or executive team, have they done like podcasts, events where they've gone up on stage and talked? All of these things are going to really help you claim that Wikipedia profile. Without that notability, it's near impossible. And I've also found there are a fun group of people who will actually report your page and take it down, like unofficial moderators. You want to ensure that you're actually capturing those reviews. So any social proof, ensuring that you get them, you capture them on G2, Capterra, Trust Radius. Companies have been doing this for years, but I know a lot of companies haven't been taking it seriously. Engaging in Reddit discussions. Reddit is massive. We're going to come on to that later. This is a key pillar of our strategy. And pulling third-party opinions into owned content. So whenever we create a piece of content for a client, we're always weaving in real user commentary. So how that might look practically is we might say, this company is good for XYZ, and then we'll pull in a review from Reddit, from G2, or from Trustpilot of a real user of the company supporting that claim. Like, when I signed up, the customer support was really good, and basically providing evidence to the claim we just made, right? And so it's not just us saying random things that are biased. The model will see that. It will be able to, we link out, so it'll be able to go to that review or that conversation wherever it's happening and verify the claim we've just made. This is like a huge trust signal that you should be doing. So why this matters is AI trusts external validation more than your website, right? So if you're making claims without any evidence, it's no bueno, right? It's just not going to go down. And so this is why, I think with traditional SEO, the game has really just been creating biased content on your website and then buying backlinks back to that content to improve your page rank. I think, if you want to win with AI search, it needs to be a bit more than that. Answer grounding. So what we want to do here is write verifiable answers with sources and quotable facts that can stand alone as citations. So basically, if we look at the heading hierarchy, those are going to be related to the query fan out process as part of the AI model. And underneath those headings, we want to basically provide the answer, right? So I think an issue with traditional SEO is there's a lot of storytelling, there's a lot of prose, in this ever-evolving digital landscape. LLMs don't care about that, right? They don't care about your storytelling. They just care if you have the answer that they're looking for, right? So just give the answer up front. Cite original sources. So if you're making a claim, whether it's a stat, whether you're providing data, X% of people that do this result in Y, then link back to the study or the source where you found that information. That's going to ground your answer. And this is based on Google's Agree research, right? So you can find their research out there. Basically, quotable facts are what AI likes to extract. Block structured for RAG. So when I talked earlier about that query fan out process, what's happening there is these models are going out and performing web searches. So for example, we've understood that I think OpenAI is using SERP API to perform web searches using Google's index. This process is also known as RAG, right? So what we want to do is we want to ensure that our content is structured in an optimal way for that RAG process, right? So RAG is retrieval augmented generation. How we do this is those TLDR boxes, those snippets at the top of your content. Using bullet points, it's going to keep your content really succinct rather than verbose paragraphs. FAQs, these are just I'd say probably the top 3 thing you could do. It's almost like a little trick, not a gimmick, but almost like a good tactic you can use to capture that long tail, because if you can't find a way to naturally weave it throughout your content, then you can just bang it onto the end as FAQs, and that's also going to help you target that long tail. 200 to 400 word chunks, I'd probably actually reduce this number a bit. So again, how these AI models work is they're retrieving passages. A passage is just a fancy word for like, a few sentences, a paragraph of text. And so that's all they're going to capture. If the value of your content, i.e. The facts, the claims you're making is spread across 2,000 words, then it's just not going to be optimal. It's not going to be within those chunks, right? So within those paragraphs, you really want to ensure you're hitting all the right notes. And this framework, if you use a ChatGPT prompt, is going to help you get there. So what we want to do is break your content into these self-contained sections. So look at these sections within your content, exclude everything else, and just look at that section and be like, okay, if a model was to look at this, would it contain all the right notes to be eligible for extraction, right? That's like a mental model to think about this. Use comparison tables for features pricing. So I think what a lot of teams got into the habit of with traditional SEO is creating these fancy graphics, and I think they still have their place. But my understanding, maybe we'll get to the point, but these LLMs aren't going to analyze the image. I know ChatGPT, for example, has capabilities to do that, but you're going to make their life much easier if you just have these comparisons, these tables in HTML rather than fancy JavaScript with nice animations or in fancy graphics. Something really important to note here is whenever you're doing comparisons, try to be as neutral as possible, because again, your claims have to be supported with evidence. And so if you're just making up lies about your competitors, saying you have things that you don't, again, you're not going to pass those signals. So why this matters: RAG systems chunk and retrieve blocks, not pages. And so Anthropic research, again, we've grounded this in real research. Proper chunking reduces failed retrievals by 49%, right? So you really, really should be incorporating this. Now, the good thing is you might be sitting on hundreds of existing articles that you've created over the last few years. You can easily, and I would highly recommend this, go back through all of that content and just add these new sections, add some tables, add TLDRs, add FAQs to each piece of content, maybe export it from GSC, find the top 20% of content. So you're focusing your efforts and prioritizing, and then just go through them all systematically, add FAQs, add tables, bullets, TLDRs. And I won't say guarantee, but I'm highly confident you'll see an uptick in AI referred traffic. Latest and consistent. This is again just like such low effort, high impact. So operating from first principles here, these models want to provide the best user experience possible, right? What's a bad user experience? A bad user experience is when I ask ChatGPT information and it provides me information that's 5 years old or 10 years old. That's going to be a bad user experience, right? Because what if that information is out of date and it's no longer relevant? And so if we flip that on its head, up-to-date information is what these models are going to look for, right? So how we do this is we explicitly timestamp at the top of the piece of content. We say updated 28th of October, right? So we explicitly state that at the top of the content. We also put that into the schema, so date modified. And that's just going to explicitly give that signal that this content is recent. There have been some examples. There was actually some research conducted recently where researchers took content that was years old, can't remember exactly how old, and all they did, the only thing they changed was the date at the top. They put it to today's date, and they saw an uptick in performance from that content. So that is like a bit growth hacky. That's not going to be around forever. I think, again, we are in this growth hacky era. I think we'll get to the point where these platforms will become more mature and probably more similar to how Google has evolved, because obviously people try to game the system. But having that recency signal is really going to matter in your content. And again, you could just go through all of your old content, update it. Maybe there are some things updated. Maybe you've done some original research since, and you can weave in new data. It's just, you don't have to go out there creating a bunch of new content. You can just squeeze your existing content for more juice. Entity graph and schema. So again, if you think about how that query fan out process works, is there appending all of these different things or entities onto the user query. So for example, if I'm like, hey, I'm a marketer, I'm using Close as my CRM, when the model goes out there, it's going to look for that topic with the association of close to CRM, right? Because I've explicitly stated, this is my tech stack. I want something that works with it. Now, if the model goes out there and comes across your content or your website or your surface area, and you haven't made it very clear that you integrate with that CRM, then you're just not gonna, your information isn't gonna get retrieved, right? So again, if we work back from that, what's the downstream effect of that? We need to make that explicit. We need to be very clear about who we integrate with, what use cases we have, features, differentiators, pricing. We need to be very explicit about these things, right? So what you want to do here is you want to create an entity map of all these relationships you have with your company, and then you want to weave that into your content. So whether that be blog articles such as alternatives to your competitors, so then the models know, oh, okay, company A is an alternative to company B. You want to have content of your integrations, maybe some playbooks on how you integrate with a CRM. You want to talk about the type of customers you serve, be very, very explicit and specific. That's in like your blogs, but also you still want to create those money pages. This is classic SEO, right? So alternative pages, comparison pages, create a landing page for every integration you have. I would just recommend you maybe do a bit of demand research. You don't want to be creating these things for the sake of creating them. Are people actually searching for these queries? But again, you need to be very explicit about these things so these models know, oh, okay, when somebody asks me about company A, I know that they integrate with all these products. I know it's relevant for these use cases. I know the pricing. I know where it wins. I know where it loses. You want to be the one that's providing all that information to it, as well as schema. So again, these are agents, machines, not humans. And so your page schema is really, really important. And this is, again, like so low effort, high impact. Not a lot of people are doing this. This is like old school SEO, but it's just become a non-negotiable. This isn't something that it's like, maybe we shouldn't do this. Like, you should absolutely be doing this. Have schema on every web page, every article. It's gonna, there's been a lot of case studies of where people have just done this, and it's improved the performance of their content. Okay, so TLDR, Citable framework then. So for C, entity clarity, right? What is this thing? What is this piece of content talking about? I is intent architecture. So what questions are you trying to answer within this piece of content? T is external proof or third-party validation. So are you validating your claims? A, answer quality. How verifiable are your facts? B, content structure. How extractable is your content? So for RAG. L is temporal consistency. So how current is your content and consistent? And E, relationship mapping. How does this content connect to other entities, right? So again, link in the description will be to a blog where you can read a bit more about our Citable framework. However, I'll also link to this ChatGPT prompt. And if you click this, it will take you to a ChatGPT window that references our framework. And all you have to do is paste even maybe a link to an existing blog or piece of content that you have, and it will optimize that piece of content in line with the Citable framework. Okay, so real quick summary then of what AI agents look for before we get into the very, very tactical specifics of how we helped this client. So number one, trust signals. So they prioritize external validation over your own claims, right? So being cited or even mentioned, and it doesn't have to be linked like in the context of backlinks. Being mentioned on high trust sites is a huge trust signal. Clarity and context. So AI needs to explicitly understand what your company does and in what unique situations your product or services are useful, right? Entity connection. So these AI models, they think in terms of entities and relationships. Entity is basically a fancy word for a thing. So you look at how your brand connects to known entities. For example, are you an alternative to brand A, or do you integrate with product B? So this allows the models to recommend you at the right time to users. So again, always going back to that first principle of these platforms are trying to provide the best user experience possible. And so that the downstream effects of that are, okay, well, what does my content need to include? Freshness and consistency. AI systems like fresh information. Okay, so let's get into the specifics around the case study. So already talked about the sort of outcome they got here. So before working with us, this company was working with an SEO agency for the last few years. They had a mature SEO program that was built by this agency, so we can't take credit for a lot of the Google Search Console data you're seeing. But they didn't have a deliberate strategy for AEO, right? This agency, like, no fault to them, like many other companies today, just thought SEO is exactly the same as AEO. And so we're just going to continue business as usual. And I think why this happens is because these companies, they are getting traffic and conversions from AI search. And so what they're doing is they're assuming, well, it's clearly working, and so we're just going to keep going as usual. I think this is a logical fallacy. Again, going back to the Facebook, TikTok analogy. So you could take your Facebook ads and literally one-to-one copy paste them and run them on TikTok. You're 100% going to get impressions. You're 100% going to get clicks and get conversions. But is that going to be the most optimal strategy? For example, are those conversions going to be at the same CAC that you had on Facebook? They're not going to be, right? Because it's a different channel, has different considerations. Now, I think because in organic, unlike paid media where, you can check your bank account every day and see the thousands of dollars that are being drained from it on ads, we don't have that visceral feeling in organic. And so I think people really don't try to optimize the strategy as much as possible. So what I will say is, and I don't want to make this like a slander match, but so this SEO agency, I would say, built solid foundations, but I would generally say there was poor non-branded performance, right? So what I mean by that is a lot of the clicks and traffic that were this company was getting were branded. And so you could make an argument that that was coming as a result of other channels, paid ads, cold outbound, social media marketing. Most people that were coming across them and clicking knew who they were, right? And really the hardest part about marketing is getting people to know who you are, which is what we refer to as like non-branded performance, right? And so a good SEO strategy or organic search strategy should really be moving the non-branded needle. Otherwise, they're just capitalizing on somebody else's work. As I mentioned, roughly 570 trials per month from AI. This is measured by self-reported attribution. Why I raise that is because this is, very explicit. Somebody is quite literally telling you they came from this channel. It's not, you can't operate with 100% confidence. I don't think any attribution model can have 100% confidence, but I definitely think it's not going to paint the full picture because really you're relying on somebody's memory, which isn't the most reliable. So maybe they say they came via Google, but really they first came across you on ChatGPT or vice versa. So after working with us, grew to over 800 trials per week, again, measured by self-reported attribution. So we're using the same model. We moved their average position in AI answers from 2.38 to 1.3. Average mentions per prompt, we doubled to 1.44. So I'm going to break down the exact steps we took them through in line with that 4-step methodology I shared before. So the first step is AI visibility audit. So we established their baseline with an audit. Now, auditing in AEO looks slightly different to SEO because of the maturity of this category, right? You've probably seen all these AI visibility tools like Profound, Scrunch, Peak. There's probably like 50 plus of them appearing that are doing the auditing piece. So with SEO, what you do normally is you'd use Google Keyword Planner. You use Ahrefs and SEMrush to get keyword data, so volume, difficulty, and things like that. And this would help you understand where you're losing, where you're winning, where the opportunities are. Again, in AEO, we're not just dealing with Google, right? We're dealing with completely new companies, OpenAI and Anthropic, right? Currently today, they don't expose impression data. And so you cannot with confidence, 100% confidence, say X amount of people are searching for this query in ChatGPT. That just does not exist. It's probabilistic, right? So in simple terms, nobody with AEO has 100% confidence in what works. Therefore, to combat that is we must operate with statistical rigor to avoid being fooled by bad data, right? And so this is why I brought up my co-founder at the beginning, who's software engineer / AI researcher by trade, is because a lot of what we do is very technical and very scientific in nature to get us to that level of probability where we have a high confidence level and we're not just being fooled by random data. And I think this is probably the biggest weakness for AEO strategies today is people, for example, are logging into their own ChatGPT workspace, which has all this built up memory of them as an individual, and they're testing queries and saying, oh, this is how we're appearing in AI answers, which is just not the way to do it, right? Because that workspace is trained on you as a person. And if you're head of marketing and you're trying to understand how you're appearing for marketing agencies that are a completely different persona, right, your data is just going to be skewed. So the first step of this is we map what we call your prompt universe, right? So think of this as all the queries that buyers use to discover you through LLMs, right? So we want to go through the different stages of awareness from people who are like problem aware, hey, I have this problem, how can I solve it? All the way to most aware, hey, compare you versus compared to A and B, right? So you want to list out all the questions and prompts they might ask where your product should ideally be recommended. And you want to think beyond keywords here, right? You want to think about questions and queries. So the longer tail, compare A versus B. What are the best tools for X? I'm a persona looking for solution A. And these are the sort of questions people are going to be asking. And then so the big question you might have is, well, how do I know what these queries, what these prompts are going to be? And this is the tough part, right? So you can either use first-party data or information that you have. So analyzing sales call transcripts, analyzing support conversations, conducting customer research, and what is the common language that your customers and prospects use, and then operate that way. So it's be like an audience-first approach. You can also look at places like Reddit, podcasts, stuff like that, and again, scrape information from there. Or you could use AI and perform deep research to do some of this for you as well. So this is what I mean, probabilistic. We don't have 100% confidence what people are searching for. And so we just need to operate at a certain confidence level where we're trying to reduce the risk of being fooled. We then, once we've got that set of prompts, we then want to test it across AI models. So we usually do ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, which are like the big three, maybe Perplexity as well, because all of these models, again, different companies, they're not all copy paste of each other, even though they might look like it. They do each have their own unique characteristics. They bias towards different things. For example, Gemini is Google. Google owns YouTube. YouTube is a big surface area for Gemini, and Google overviews. ChatGPT biases towards like Wikipedia and Reddit. So they do have their own considerations. An AEO strategy should improve your performance on all models, but there is also the channel-specific tactics to consider. So we need to understand how you're performing across all these different models. Really, really consider conditions that could impact the answers that you're seeing, right? So if you're doing this in your own workspace, well, again, your geography is going to matter. For example, if you're based in the US and you're looking for HR companies, then the answer ChatGPT is going to provide to you is going to be relevant to your location. But what if your ICP is in Europe, right? So again, your data is going to be skewed. You're going to be fooled by randomness. Different personas. So if you look at your ChatGPT workspace, you can view the saved memories. So ChatGPT has built up a knowledge graph of you as an individual. But if your target personas are not you, they're completely different people, then again, those saved memories are going to skew your answers, right? So this is why I recommend you either create a test environment if you want to get super nerdy, or you can just use a tool like Scrunch, which is we're an agency partner of them, and they'll do this out of the box. This screenshot on the right is software that we use internally for our clients. It just gives us more freedom and allows us to get like super specific. So when you test across these AI models, log where you're being mentioned, log where you're being what sources are being cited, because that is going to inform the strategy, right? That's how you're going to start to influence these AI answers. So you need to be informed. Let's see if we've got anything. Yeah. So second step is the content, right? So building an AI-assisted content engine. So this is like a very high-level, not exhaustive overview of our content workflow under the hood. Now, the bottom line up front of our workflow is, so we use custom AI-powered workflows, but with a senior human in the loop that allows us to solve for volume whilst also maintaining quality. We just simply would not be able to get results for our clients if we had low quality content. Right? We just wouldn't be able to get past the requirements of LLMs. So all content we ship is reviewed and owned by a human. Nothing gets published programmatically. Our workflow goes all the way from like keyword research. So we do a mixture of traditional keyword research. Why that's useful is because ultimately, if you look at the queries people search, they consist of keywords. Keyword data is good as a proxy for demand, but it's not, a Ahrefs telling you a million people are searching for this keyword does not mean a million people are searching for that keyword in ChatGPT, but it acts as somewhat of a proxy. So we bake in traditional keyword research. We also bake in those AI visibility audits we do. We create company artifacts, so things like target personas. We break each persona down. These artifacts are anywhere between 2,000 to 5,000 words each. Company overview, positioning, differentiators, competitors, sentiment, writing guidelines as well, so that we're writing in our client's tone of voice and the content feels human rather than robotic. So those are acting as the inputs. So we perform keyword research. We then put those into clusters. We follow a pillar and spoke model, as I mentioned before, for that topical authority, or to create topical authority or build upon existing topical authority. And then we'll expand to adjacent topics to build upon it from there. All content that we create targets a specific persona. It aims to satisfy a specific search intent, i.e. answer the query that the user has asked, and is written in our client's style and tone of voice. We use an internal rubric, which is that Citable framework that ensures our content is optimal for LLM retrieval, which by nature also satisfies traditional search engines. So what we've seen is we've had a big impact on the AI search front, but also we're outperforming SEO teams and SEO agencies in the SERP. So we're outperforming them at SEO because our content is hitting all of those quality signals. It also satisfies Google search algorithm, hence why we do SEO and AEO together under one roof. As I mentioned, did write about the Citable framework on our website if you want to take a look. Now, normally, because we run this content through a demand-weighted priority model, so basically we prioritize our content by impact, by difficulty, by business fit. Normally, what that manifests as is middle to bottom of funnel content, right? We do expand to more informational content to capture that top of funnel, but mostly our content is going to be the middle and bottom of funnel because it delivers the best impact, and it's closer to the business because we're comparing the product, we're speaking to the jobs to be done of the customer, etc. We have 3 primary types of content. So we do daily articles, which would be like on the blog. We also do landing pages, but again, looking at it from perspective of AEO. So we're not trying to win any copywriting awards, using buzzwords and more of like the creative side of product marketing, facts, figures, plain language. That doesn't mean they read robotically. It doesn't mean that at all. But we're just being very, very specific and explicit with our language, as well as original research. So if you think what everyone's doing right now is they're just shipping AI slop. And so it's just the same content being recycled and recycled, right? So what we're doing with our clients, because we work with a lot of B2B SaaS companies, is we will take their first party data, so information that only they have. We will analyze that and we will turn it into original research. So this will materialize as things of like state of X industry report, or statistics on some sort of topic related to their product, because this is novel information. Models love novel information because it helps them create a better user experience, and it's a high level of quality. And by nature, by being good content, you're also going to attract mentions and backlinks as well. So 3 types of content we do. Now the big question is, does AI hurt the performance of your content? So like if you use AI as part of your creation or generation process, does it hurt the performance of your content, right? So Google itself states it does not care if you use AI, if your content is AI generated, right? So the problem is not AI. The problem is low quality content, right? So if your content is flagged as low quality, then that's more of a process problem, not the technology or the tool you use. It's more of the process of how you executed. So low quality content existed long before AI became popular, right? So the problem is not using AI. The problem is low quality content. So as they say here, however it is produced, they don't care. Our focus is on the quality rather than how the content is produced, right? So again, back to the point ages ago about naysayers. They'll tell you that AI generated content is going to tank your rankings and your organic traffic. I think there's some truth to that if you're doing it the wrong way and you're just shipping thin, content, hundreds of spammy pages, 100%, you're going to get punished. But if you're using AI as part of your content workflow and it's being flagged as AI, then you're just doing it wrong. And so don't, throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to AI generated content. That's why we tend to say AI assisted than generated. So let's get onto some more bits of the content stuff then. So we use our own platform for this, but that's not required. We just take things to the extreme because it gives us more freedom, more control. And really, we're trying to build content engines. And so we view things through the lens of like a product. And so out of the box software and spreadsheets doesn't really fit our needs. So what you could do is take some of these concepts and these principles and just apply them to your unique situation. What I might do in other videos is break down how I would approach this if I just had Claude or ChatGPT or, common software that's available today. If you think that'd be of interest, just let me know below and I'll get it done ASAP. So keyword clustering. So based on the gaps found from the AI audit, as well as that traditional keyword research, competitive research, and current topical authority, that's how we cluster keywords. We prioritize them by business fit, impact, and difficulty. Every piece of content we publish is connected to the client's product position. We're not just posting random piece of content. We are trying to drive business impact here. Really, what I would say is our insights from our own tech that we've built to do those AI visibility audits, that's what gives us and then by nature our clients an unfair advantage, because we're able to know exactly where they're losing, where they're winning, what the opportunities are within AI answers, and that downstream affects all of the content we publish. So here you can see inside our platform, under the strategy section, we've got keyword universe. So we broke them into clusters. As you can see, clusters have sometimes a handful, sometimes dozens of keywords underneath them. We score them. We give them a score, and then you'll see here on the right, we then turn them into assignments. So think of assignments as briefs. For one cluster, we might have 5 content assignments to try get that authority within that cluster. Assignment generation then. So we then turn those clusters into pieces of content. So we do the pillar and spoke, hub and spoke model with internal linking to spread the link juice. We use a mix of content types that align with search intent behind the target query. So here on the assignments page, we can see this is a pillar piece of content. We can see 0 out of 6 pieces of content have been done for this cluster. You can see the content type. So we have, we really try to vary the content type here, because some content types satisfy a search intent better, i.e. if someone's doing a comparison, vendor A versus vendor B, then that's probably going to be in like a tools overview type commercial investigation, as we can see here. If it's like they're looking to learn a bit more about a topic, it might be like a deep dive or like a buyer's guide. So as you can see here, mapping by content type, intent, and then the clusters. And we want to also experiment with different content types, because one content type might be an outlier relative to others. And so we're always trying to find that winner that we can then scale. So if we look at the pillar and spoke model here, apologies if this is basics. So we have the pillar at the top here. It then links out to all these spokes, which are like subtopics of the pillar. And then all of the spokes are linking to each other and back to the pillar. So it's going to get you that topical authority, right? Because you think of how these models, as well as Google search algorithm, crawls content, goes onto your page, finds links, goes through to those links to the pillars, goes sideways, goes back. And so then it understands and maps those pieces of content to each other. Content generation then. So every piece of content hits 70% on our Citable framework. Biggest takeaway from this video for you is honestly going to be to use this framework and just read the blog and plug it into ChatGPT. Roughly 1,500 to 3,000 words in length. Some pieces of content go up to 5,000. We're always experimenting with different types. Multimedia, we do graphics, we pull in videos, we pull in real user commentary from Reddit, G2, and Trustpilot to hit those external validation signals. We're citing original sources to support claims, pricing, feature stats, differentiators. So we're not just making baseless claims that can't be corroborated. And there's an expert human in a loop that manages the strategy and elevates each piece of content. Like a big priority for me is, what's that 1%? How can we improve our content by 1%? Is it the blog image, which, LLMs aren't going to care about, but it improves the client experience? I think, we all judge a book by its cover. Is it inline CTAs within the piece of content? Is it, creating custom components for each client? I'm always trying to think, how can we elevate the content by 1%? So here we can see we're in our content section here. Excuse all the blurring, by the way. As you can tell, I'm trying to keep this client confidential. We are under an NDA with them, and I value our partnership with them more than validation online. So for this piece of content, we've generated 17 artifacts, right? So there's a lot of information and context that's going into each piece of content, right? So we can see here, well, we've got fact check reports. So especially important, we work with some clients that, are regulated industries. And so really, really important that any claims we're making are fact checking. Now, what's happening here is any claim we make, we put into a table. We try to cite the original source where this claim came from. If we can't cite the original source, the claim is removed from the piece of content. Related content, this is where we're looking for like internal links, YouTube videos, reviews on Trustpilot, G2, conversations in Reddit, and then that gets incorporated to the content. Research, just as you would in an editorial team. Hey, we're posting about this topic, now go out and do research. So we break it down into questions, we pull that information in, and that's weaved in throughout the piece of content. So there's a lot of context going into each of these. And you can see we have a text editor here. This is where our team of editors and content strategists sit, where they review the content, edit it, and then from here it gets put into the client CMS. So here we can see an example of the fact check step. So like I said, claim on the left, status of the claim, and evidence that supports the claim. Evidence can't be found, it's removed from the content. Here we can see related content here. So again, looking for reviews, Reddit conversations, etc. And here we can see a brief of the content. Don't know if it says how many words this is. Usually these briefs are like 1,000 to 3,000 words. So just as you would an editorial team, the slug, proposed title, length target, the thesis behind the piece of content. What do we want? What's the primary goal here? What do we want the reader to learn? What are the three takeaways? And then it goes out and conducts the research based on the brief. So just to recap, traditional content versus AEO content. So in the opening, traditional content, we've got into this habit of like a lot of storytelling, a lot of prose. AEO content, get to the point. What is the bottom line up front of this piece of content? Structure, continuous narrative versus self-contained blocks that can be extracted by themselves. Facts scattered throughout. AEO content within each box. Headings, generic headings in traditional content, our story, why we're different. Whereas in AEO content, semantic, right? Trying to satisfy the search intent. I'm not going to claim this is unique to AEO. So, semantic headings and having semantic clarity within your content is what good content teams have been doing forever. Extractability. So in traditional content must read the entire piece, whereas in AEO content can extract any section, those chunks independently. Quotable, no clear sound bites. AEO content, quotable facts per section. AI friendly, traditional content is usually low. AEO content is high, hence why it's called answer engine optimized content. Okay, so let's move on to a bit of Reddit. This is really, really key. We do a lot of work here, and I definitely want to post more content about this. So the goal here is to build presence in places that LLMs trust, right? So in SEO, the game was to get backlinks to improve your domain authority, which by nature improved, well, not necessarily, but you then also get backlinks to individual pages to improve the page rank. That's how Google would decide where your content ranks in the SERP. In AEO, backlinks still matter. So something you'll never, ever hear me say is like SEO is dead or dying, still very important. It's just the surface area has expanded. So in AEO, it's more about the natural and often unlinked. So it doesn't need to be a backlink. Conversations that are happening on the internet and what are people saying about your company. So this came out a while ago. I don't think this is still true today, but top domains cited on LLMs. You can see Reddit's right at the top, Wikipedia, YouTube. We mainly focus on Reddit. We like to keep things tight and we like to master certain channels. This is just a very, very random example I created for a while back when I was doing some research. So we can see this is Perplexity, searching best cold email software. You can see there's a mixture of owned sources. So this is Sales Handy. They own this as their blog that's being cited. Whereas there are these earned sources, which are like third party. You do not own them. And we can see Reddit's being cited here. And there's an interesting thing here. So we can see somebody was asking for best cold email tools for small businesses. The first thing you'll notice is this account and this post has been deleted, yet it's still being cited. That's interesting. And then we can see that in the comment, this is just like a natural comment. It doesn't seem very overly promotional. They're tackling all that long tail, So here they're talking about Sales Handy, which is being associated with the best cold email. They're giving a suggestion here, talking about how many leads they sent and how many cold emails they sent, talking about some of the capabilities. And so we can see that the LLM has gone to Reddit, found Sales Handy being spoken about in relation to the topic of cold email, and that's what's being pulled into the AI answers. Okay, so quick TLDR of our Reddit process then. So we're able to seed content in primary subreddits. So those subreddits that are going to be high traffic, they're going to be rich in your ICP. Now, why I bring that up is because typically these subreddits, the big ones, tens of thousands, over 100,000 people are in them. Typically, they're tougher to rank in because they have auto mod rules. So basically, if you post from an account that has below a certain amount of karma, if it is below a certain age, i.e. it's a new account or it's less than 1 year old, typically, not always, your content's just going to get automatically removed and you have a higher probability of getting banned. So we use a dedicated account infrastructure to get past that. We do comments, posts, and natural discussions underneath those posts involving multiple accounts. We're able to rank comments as number one underneath posts, which is going to maximize your impression. So similar to this one, disclosure, this is not our comment, this is not our client, but just as way of an example, see how when you sort by best, this comment shows. We're able to do that. And we use a framework to ensure content, whether it's post or comment, is optimal for LLM retrieval and understanding. So going back to, fundamentally, what is good AEO content? Well, it's content that speaks to that long tail of AI queries and is entity rich. So it gives, it basically satisfies the varying intents, alternatives, comparisons, integrations, etc. So the simple explanation of that is you want to talk about many things within your content. You don't want to just be like, hey, buy this product or buy this service, because it's not going to be optimal for LLM retrieval. So how do we get there? Well, one of the ways we identify the posts or subreddits to target is, again, those AI visibility audits that we conduct. So one of the benefits of doing that is we're able to scrape all of the citations that are influenced in those AI answers. We typically bucket them to competitor-owned, competitor-earned. So that helps us understand what source of information from a competitive standpoint are ranking and what source of information from a client perspective are ranking, and we run plays for each bucket. But here we can see in this spreadsheet with a lot of blur going on is we've identified a post within a subreddit, within the B2B marketing subreddit, that is being cited. It's a competitor-earned source, meaning that our client's competitor is being referenced in that citation. And so this really is one way we steer the strategy, because we know models are favoring this specific post or this specific subreddit, and so we target there. Another way is you can just identify subreddits and post ranking in the SERP. So if you search some queries in Google, switch to forums, it will show you posts and subreddits that are ranking there. Of course, this is from a Google perspective, not like a ChatGPT perspective, but it's another signal. Then we go into the content stuff. So as I mentioned, we can seed comments or posts from aged high karma accounts. So here you can see we're in the entrepreneur subreddit, what we'd call a primary subreddit. We can see that our comment has placed best within this post, so ranking at the top, which is going to give it more impressions. And as you can see, it doesn't actually have that many upvotes, so it's all relative to what's the number of upvotes on the current best performer, and all we have to do is outperform it. Seed in entire discussions here, though. So now we're in the personal training subreddit. So one of our clients, I guess, has a product that can be sold to personal training coaches. So this is our post that we published in the subreddit, 44 upvotes, 35 comments, and then we actually seeded the discussion underneath that post as well. So these are accounts that we own. So somebody replying to the original post, somebody replying to that reply, and then this account up here replying to the reply. Now, what's going on here? So basically, this is how we subtly bridge to the solution. So this person responded here, just to give you like a generic overview of basically resonating with the problem that the OP is experiencing, and then hinting at basically they solved this problem. And then somebody follows up to them and goes, well, hey, how did you do that? How did you solve that problem? And then in the follow-up, this person goes, well, I tried company A, I tried company B, I found company A had these features, but company B had these features which I preferred, and ultimately I settled on company B or company C, right? And company B or company C would be our client, right? So it's like a neutral bridge to the solution, and it's not blatant promotion, which is just not going to work on Reddit. So, you know, we have put an enormous amount of time into this strategy of how we do this on Reddit, and it works really, really well. Whereas I think what most people are doing is just buying a software that finds subreddits and like automatically creates the comment and posts. I think that might work to some degree, but it's definitely what I wouldn't call an optimal strategy. So just a brief overview of our content framework here. So we're creating entity-rich, verifiable content that both search engines and LLMs prioritize for retrieval and citation. So what we do is we're embedding 3 to 6 concrete entities or things per 100 words in our content. So these are like specific tools, standards, metrics, product capabilities, integrations. And we just have a very strict process where all of our comments or posts are getting fact checked. You know, if we're making a claim about a competitor, we want to make sure it's true. And so we have some checks and balances there. If we're citing original sources, we want to fact check that as well. And we're doing this all so that AI systems can confidently cite our information, and it's going to get past that reasoning chain and appear in the AI answer. Let's see if we've got anything else down here. Okay, and then finally, the fourth part is technical optimization. So this is really important. It's probably the least sexiest part of AEO, but again, we're optimizing for agents here, so it's really non-negotiable. So broadly speaking, you know, there are definitely some people who like to nerd out about the technical side, and they might disagree with me here. But we look at technical optimization from 5 sub areas. So we've got indexability and crawling optimization. So this is allowing these agents to crawl your website, ensuring that your content is rendered, server-side rendered HTML, not JavaScript only. Site architecture, so this is implement canonical tags and clean URL structures to eliminate duplicate content and help AI understand which pages to cite. So over, you know, a period of years, it does become really hard to like manage your site architecture and your content. And what tends to happen is you start then having like duplication, i.e. multiple pieces of content talking about the same thing, or your pages start to become disconnected and you get what you call orphan pages. And so it is important that you do have all of your house in good order, because again, these are agents, and how do they know which piece of content is the best one to look at if you're not explicitly stating that through canonical tags? Structured data, so this is like the schema stuff. So implementing structured data on all of your pages is going to help LLMs understand where to look and what is what. Performance, core web vitals. So basically, does your website or pages load fast enough? And stuff. So basically how you'd improve that is compression of images, could be just reducing the content on the pages, could be some CDN related stuff. So there's a lot that can be done there. You just want to ensure that your website loads fast. So the 80-20, so basically the high impact, I think you can definitely get lost in the noise with technical optimization. So this is the 80-20 that I'd focus on if I were you. So indexability and crawling. So what to do, check your robots.txt and ensure that you're allowing basically the AI model's bots to crawl your website. Verify, server returns 200 status codes for critical pages. Ensure your content is server-side rendered HTML, not client-side JavaScript only. And ensure your sitemap basically is submitted and your pages that you want to be indexed are indexed. You know, if AI can't crawl you, then nothing else matters, right? It doesn't matter how good your content is, doesn't matter what you're doing on Reddit. If your content can't be accessed, then it's never going to be cited. Looking at performance optimization then. So optimize time to first byte to less than 1 second. You can use this core web vitals assessment. So this is our client passing here. Compress your images, implement CDN for global content delivery, just deliver your content faster, and then minimize JavaScript. Basically all these fancy animations that we got into the habit of using to make our websites look great. You just, you know, Don't remove them all, but you need to be quite careful of those, because it just makes life difficult for AI models. Structured data and schema then. So what to do here: implement schema on all your money pages, all your articles, or at least, if you have hundreds, at least do your top 20%, export them from GSC, filter them or rank them by clicks or impressions, and then just, do the top 20% and disregard everything else. If you can get to everything else, do it, just by way of prioritization. Add FAQ content and FAQ schema to every article page as well as your product pages as well. It's not going to hurt you here. And then validate with Google Rich Results Test. This is going to show you what the schema looks like. Okay, moving on. So how do you measure AEO success? How do you know all of this is actually having an impact on your business? So this is broadly how we look at things. So just looking at the different funnel stages. So top of funnel, we're really looking at those lead-in metrics, right? How are we influencing the narrative within the answers? Because remember, less people are going to be clicking through to your website. And so if you're not measuring that beginning part over here, you're missing a huge part of the picture, or the majority of the picture, because only, small percentage of people are actually going to click. So here we're measuring things like share of voice, mention rate, citation rate. These are AEO specific metrics. Middle of funnel, we're looking at, okay, well, how much traffic are these models driving to our website? And I'll show you some regex you can use in your analytics tools to get that. Clicks, tracking clicks as well as brand search lift. So none of this is easy. I think the measurement is probably the most boring, hardest part of being a marketer. But what we'll typically see, right, is people, especially in B2B where sales cycles are longer, people rarely will click and then convert straight away. They might do some research in ChatGPT, for example, and then, the job might be finished. And then they might come back 6 months later, but you're still top of mind. And they're like, okay, vendor A was recommended to me when I did that research. Now I'm going to book a demo with vendor A. But how they book that demo, they might go direct to your website. They might search you on Google. They might be scrolling through LinkedIn and see a post from you or your team and go through that way. And so that attribution is basically lost, right? Even though it was AI or AI search that influenced the decision, how they actually came through and converted would be attributed to a different channel. So what we want to do is we want to measure your brand search lift. What that means is just monitoring how the percentage or the absolute figure of people that are coming via brand search over time, because a lot of people are going to come they're going to search your company's name explicitly, right? So like, for example, we're Discovered Labs. We might be doing a really good job in AEO, but how the person converts is they might just search Discovered Labs on Google. That's a brand search term. Or they might just, if they remember our URL, they might come direct and put it into the URL bar. So you do want to have an idea of how that's changing over time, because it tells you that your demand creation activities or demand generation activities are having an impact. I experienced this with ads. You spend 100K on ads. Also, you're getting conversions and everything, but also magically your direct, your referral, your organic traffic is increasing as well. And that's happening because of the ads. It's known as a halo effect. So don't just be tunneled vision. I think people get too tunnel vision with attribution. Bottom of funnel then, obviously this is business impact. So how many trials are you generating? How many demos? How much pipeline has it been influenced by this channel? And how much in new revenue? Now, from like a GA4 perspective, you can use this regex, create a report. So we put session source matches, put this regex in here. And this is going to show you roughly AI referred traffic. So sometimes they add UTM parameters. So it'll be like UTM source ChatGPT. And so this will help you understand, give you one signal. It's, again, none of this is exhaustive, but give you an idea of how much traffic are coming from these LLMs from a GA4 perspective. In GSC, what you can do is you can add a filter by this custom regex query. This is just going to show you what are the type of queries that people are searching, likely to be searching in Gemini or as part of Google overviews to come across you, right? So this can inform some of your content. Remember, everything in GSE is going to be Google specific, right? So it's not going to consider ChatGPT or Claude, but it will consider Gemini and overviews. what I highly recommend, I would put this as priority number one if you can, is implement self-reported attribution. So I talked about this is how our client measured success. So what this looks like is when somebody hits that conversion event, whether it be booking a demo, whether it be signing up for an account, just ask them, how did you hear about us? Now, some people say this should be a free form field, so you're not, potentially introducing bias, or you can have these explicit options where they just select. So highly recommend you add this, because we've had instances where AI referral traffic is trending down, but self-reported attribution is going exponential, right? And so without this self-reported attribution, a client would look at this and be like, well, guys, what's going on? Like, things are going down. Whereas self-reported attribution was showing a completely different picture. And that just really speaks to the messiness of measurement. So how long does it take to see results with AEO? So traditional SEO, again, got that bad rep because you'd hire an agency and they'd be like, yeah, you're not going to make $1 for 6 months. AEO can take weeks. Honestly, it could take days. We've had new content be cited within 48 to 72 hours. That doesn't necessarily mean it's drove business impact, but the sort of lifeline of AEO is much quicker. And I think, not to go off topic, I think we are entering this like fast food era of organic search, where these LLMs are just absolute information hoovers, right? 700 million weekly active users of ChatGPT every day. Millions of people are searching queries, and these LLMs need to find content. And so I think this era of creating a piece of content and it doing well for like 6 months or 12 months, I think that's quickly dying. And so the downstream effect there is we need more surface area, we need more content. Agents conduct real-time web searches for information, right? So yeah, I just talked about that. And yeah, we've also had qualified inbound leads on domains, fresh domains with DA0, right? So in SEO, this would just never happen. You had to have high domain authority, you had to have your backlinks, have a bunch of content. This is why it would take 6 months. Whereas we've had fresh domains get inbound sales calls just by pulling the right levers, right? Now, this isn't a get-rich-quick schema. I suppose say scheme. That's quite funny. This is not what I'm trying to convey here at all. I would say that a deliberate strategy should start showing business impact within 4 to 8 weeks. This is not like, hey, do a bit of Reddit, punch a bit of content out, and you're going to change your business overnight. That is definitely not what I'm trying to convey here. And you need a deliberate strategy, and you need to, like with any other channel, there's people that are going to kind of half-ass it, and then there are people who are going to absolutely obsess over it, and those are probably going to be the people that get the better results. Will AEO work for my industry or ICP? So obviously it's a subjective question, right? But I get this a lot. The way to think about this is AI search isn't just disrupting traditional search, i.e. Google, because then you could make the argument of, okay, well, organic search has never really been a good channel for us, and so I guess AI search isn't going to work either. But AI search isn't just disrupting Google, right? It's changing the entire buyer's journey, as I talked about at the beginning, right? So it's not just Google it's disrupting G2, Trustpilot, looking for information on LinkedIn and YouTube, right? Anywhere where buyers previously went to self-research, to conduct research as part of their vendor evaluation process, all of that's being disrupted, right? And so in that lens, it's if your buyers were likely to have gone to those places previously, and I imagine they would, unless they're purely working off private referrals, then yes, I think AEO could have an impact for your business, right? And buyers can get very niche, personalized recommendations in a matter of seconds, right? So vendor evaluation is now completely different and could be done in a matter of hours rather than, weeks and months. The mental model I like to use here is AI search is really like having your own procurement team, where you give them your requirements and they go out, find relevant vendors for you and bring them back to you in a list that's personalized to your unique situation, right? It's very different to what we've experienced with SEO. Okay, so quick summary. So 4 pillars for AI search dominance. You want to audit, get a baseline of your current visibility, content, right, that answers those questions and satisfies the long tail from the query fan out process. External validation, build offsite presence in places that LLMs trust, go beyond what we have historically done with SEO and backlinks. Technical, make your website AI ready. And if you want to go into more detail about any of this, again, there's links in the description. So breakdown of our Citable framework, a ChatGPT prompt where it takes that framework, combine that with an existing piece of content you have, and it should optimize it. And if you want all of this to be taken off your plate and managed for you, then go to discoveredlabs.com and we'll do it for you. Just a quick 20 seconds on what working with us looks like. So we provide an end-to-end service that helps B2B companies get discovered in AI search. So we primarily focus on AEO, so optimizing for citations and recommendations using internal tech and understanding to achieve that. However, we do cover all surface areas. So we do both SEO and AEO. Really, we cover this as search optimization. So Google, Bing, and AI assistants, third-party authority. So we build signals in places that AI trust. And if, there's plenty of software out there. If you want to do this yourself, probably I'd encourage you to start there. Just how we compare is we do this for you rather than you logging into another dashboard and being told you have problems. We'll do that, but we'll also fix the problems for you. And so you're paying for outcomes rather than paying for access to a product. On average, by day 7 to 10, we're shipping content. So there is no 4 to 6 week onboarding period with us. We've really built the company in a way that allows us to move fast. So if you want to get a free AI search visibility audit to understand how you're appearing, where you're being mentioned, how you're being framed within AI answers, then just go to discoveredlabs.com and book a call. Cheers.